The marble fountain gurgled as I pulled up to what had once been my vacant lot. In its place now stood a sprawling mansion with a circular driveway and a 6-car garage, right in the middle of the 15 acres I had legally owned for the last decade. From the front steps, a woman in crisp tennis whites strolled out, smoothie in one hand and phone in the other, waving at me like I was the landscaper arriving late. Her blonde hair was tied back in a flawless ponytail, and her sunglasses looked expensive enough to cover someone's annual mortgage. "You're trespassing," she trilled in a sing-song tone that suggested she wasn't used to being challenged. "This is private HOA property now." I opened my glove compartment and pulled out the laminated copy of my deed, an old habit from years of property disputes in my work as a real estate attorney. Holding it up, I said evenly, "No. What you've done is build a 9,000-square-foot house on my land." She laughed. Not a nervous laugh, but the kind of theatrical chuckle that makes you wonder if you've missed the punchline. Sliding her sunglasses down, she gave me a once-over with eyes perfectly lined in makeup. "Oh, sweetie," she purred. "This land has belonged to the HOA for years. I'm Patricia Patton, president of Riverside Estates. I personally approved this development. Unfortunately for her, I wasn't just the rightful owner. I was also the attorney who had handled dozens of cases exactly like this one. Patricia Patton had just walked into the worst mistake of her privileged life. My name is Daniel Morrison. 8 years ago, I bought 15 acres of forested land just outside Riverside Valley, remote, quiet, and deliberately chosen because it lay outside city limits and beyond the reach of any HOA. I had it surveyed twice, filed everything with the county, and confirmed the boundaries down to the inch. A creek ran through untouched woods, and each fall I'd visit to walk beneath the trees as their leaves turned red and gold. The plan was to build a modest retirement cabin one day, a retreat from city noise and the grind of law practice. Until then, I wanted the land to stay pristine, but Riverside Valley grew. Developments sprouted like weeds, and with them came the Riverside Estates HOA, ruled with an iron fist by Patricia. She was infamous for enforcing community standards with almost tyrannical zeal, fining a neighbor $500 because their shutters weren't symmetrical, forcing an elderly couple to rip out their vegetable garden for clashing with her idea of aesthetics, even measuring lawn height with a ruler to mail out violation notices if it exceeded regulation by a fraction. When her son-in-law, developer Bradley Harrison, pitched her on a luxury estate project, Patricia had the perfect target in mind: my land. Ownership didn't seem to matter to her. She insisted my property fell within HOA boundaries, citing a so-called 1994 expansion map. During discovery, I eventually saw this map. It looked like it had been doodled in Microsoft Paint. The borders didn't match any official surveys, but somehow my parcel appeared inside their claimed territory. Without checking public records, consulting an attorney, or contacting me, Patricia greenlit Bradley's development. She rammed it through their architectural committee, which was essentially her best friend Margaret, and Margaret's absentee husband. I was in Colorado handling a trial when the bulldozers rolled in. My elderly neighbor Earl, who lived on the adjoining lot, left me frantic messages, but I was stuck in court. By the time I listened, 3 acres of century-old trees were already gone. I flew back immediately, and what I saw left me speechless. They weren't building a home. They were erecting a shrine to excess. Imported Italian marble columns, a wine cellar for 1,000 bottles, Brazilian hardwood floors, a butterfly-shaped swimming pool, all without permits, zoning variances, or environmental approvals. Yet somehow utilities were already connected. Plumbing and power lines were installed, and a gaudy gold-lettered mailbox at the driveway announced, "The Pattons." I drove straight to the HOA office, a converted dentist's suite. Patricia sat at her desk, surrounded by violation notices she was preparing to unleash. "Mr. Morrison," she said without looking up, "I heard you're back. I trust you've seen how we've improved that abandoned lot." "My lot," I corrected, placing my deed on the desk. "The one you've illegally developed." She glanced at the document as if it were a grocery receipt. "We're asserting historical community rights under continuous use and improvement doctrine," she replied, a legalese smokescreen that amounted to stylish squatting. "Patricia," I said, shifting into courtroom mode. "You've built on private property without authorization. That's trespassing, theft, and at least half a dozen other crimes." She leaned back, smiling smugly. "Then prove it in court. Until then, security will escort you off HOA grounds." That was her second catastrophic misstep. I immediately retained Sarah Chen, my former law partner and one of the sharpest property attorneys in the state. Within 2 days, we pulled every county record. Ownership was still mine. No sale, no transfer, no easement, no lien. Nothing. When we brought the situation to Frank Rodriguez, the county's veteran building inspector, the man nearly fainted. Patricia had filed HOA-branded paperwork with decorative letterheads, but had never secured real permits. She labeled the project a community beautification initiative that supposedly required no county oversight. Worse, she had siphoned $75,000 of HOA funds under the budget line, Green Beautification and Community Enhancement. In truth, it had paid for her mansion's elaborate gardens, fountain, and imported plants. I filed after I issued Patricia a cease and desist order. She retaliated by stationing private security guards at the entrance to my own land. They set up traffic cones and signs declaring, "Private HOA use only. Violators will be prosecuted." That was her third and final mistake. I called the sheriff's department. Within an hour, Deputy Martinez pulled up, glanced at my deed, then at the guards, and shook his head. "Ma'am," he told the lead guard, "remove these cones and let this man onto his property." The guard started to protest, citing Patricia Pettin, but Martinez cut her off. "I don't care what Patricia Pettin said. This is his land. Move the cones now or I'll arrest you for obstruction." The cones were cleared immediately. With the deputy and a process server at my side, I stepped onto my property. We found Patricia lounging on the faux French patio she had built, sipping champagne with her son-in-law, Bradley. "Patricia Pettin?" the process server asked. "Yes," she replied, her tone sharp with annoyance. "You've been served." The expression on her face as she read the summons was unforgettable. Her carefully maintained composure cracked like an eggshell, exposing raw panic beneath. In court, my case was airtight. Judge Thompson, a tough, no-nonsense jurist with 2 decades on the bench, reviewed the evidence with growing disbelief. My deed predated the HOA by 14 years, meaning my land had never been part of their jurisdiction. Patricia's so-called historical map was tossed out as the forgery it was. "Mrs. Pettin," Judge Thompson asked, peering over her glasses, "did you ever confirm the actual property records with the county?" Patricia's nervous attorney mumbled something about executive interpretation of boundaries, but the judge silenced him. "That's not what I asked. Did you check the records?" Lifting her chin, Patricia declared, "As HOA president, I have executive authority to make development decisions in the community's best interest." Judge Thompson's expression hardened. She granted me a permanent injunction, ordered an independent appraisal of damages, and even referred the matter for possible criminal prosecution. The real storm broke when I also filed suit against the HOA itself for trespass, unlawful development, and land conversion. My wife, Sarah, personally ensured every homeowner received notice of the lawsuit, making it clear that their dues had funded Patricia's private mansion. The backlash was swift. At an emergency meeting in the community center, packed to standing room only, long-suppressed anger finally erupted. Margaret, one of Patricia's closest allies, was the first to speak. "She told me it was a community project," Margaret admitted, wringing her hands. "I didn't know she was using our funds for her own house." One by one, neighbors shared their stories: the $500 shutter fine, the vegetable garden ban, the infamous beige garage door dispute. Finally, Dr. Peterson stood up. "I move for a vote of no confidence in our current president," he declared, the same man she'd fined 3 times for a mailbox being 2 inches too tall. The motion carried unanimously. Patricia was stripped of her title and escorted from the building, shouting about ungrateful peasants and architectural integrity. 2 months later, the civil judgment landed, $2.3 million in damages, plus full ownership of the mansion she had illegally erected on my land. Patricia's assets were frozen, and the HOA's insurance refused to cover intentional crimes. Suddenly, the 9,000-square-foot mansion was mine. To celebrate, I hosted a reclamation barbecue on the marble patio. Every neighbor attended. Kids splashed in the butterfly pool. Burgers sizzled on the grill, and for the first time, the community felt united. Patricia, now reduced to driving a Prius after selling her luxury cars to cover legal fees, rolled past the party. She leaned out her window and screamed, "This isn't over! I'll sue you for everything." Deputy Martinez, off duty and holding a burger, calmly approached her car. "Ma'am, you just blew through a stop sign. License and registration." She drove away with a $250 ticket. Later, I converted her wine cellar into a woodworking shop and replaced the gaudy fountain with a koi pond I named Patricia's Folly. The butterfly pool still stands, though I've thought about reshaping it into something less ostentatious. I now split my time between the cabin and the mansion Patricia built for herself. The irony isn't lost on anyone, especially when I host the monthly neighborhood cookouts that bring people together far better than her iron rule ever did. Her downfall didn't end there. During the criminal trial, prosecutors revealed this wasn't Patricia's first scheme. She had pulled similar scams in 2 other states over the past 15 years. The jury deliberated less than 2 hours before finding her guilty of wire fraud, embezzlement, criminal trespass, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison and ordered $3.7 million in restitution. As the bailiff clicked handcuffs around her wrists, Patricia's last offense, her icy composure, finally shattered. 8 years? She shrieked, her voice breaking. "But I'm the HOA.